It's a new page and I'm going to be showing you how to combine your simple stitches into something that looks a lot more complicated. So welcome to Marion's World and I hope you enjoy it. I've decided to do a week or a page anyway on combining stitches because sometimes things look really complicated but when you break them down they're really simple. And I thought, what's the best way of showing combined stitches? And so it has to be crazy patchwork. I've got some scraps here I've just pulled together and I'm going to iron them now. I've got my iron ready. So now that they're all pressed, I can set up ready to put the first pieces on my page. So the first thing I need to do is just start and work on something of a design, and I definitely thought that this little hydrangea was a good one for the middle because I can always over embroider this or add some embellishments, so that's definitely going to be in the middle. Maybe I could just take a piece of its own lining and maybe do that. So I'm not really bothered about where the grain lines are or anything like that. I'm just going to decide where I would like it to be, and I think I want the stalk to come down a bit and maybe have this little piece coming here. I think that would be a nice start. So to do that, normally in crazy patchwork you would be turning these under. So I could either turn this backwards and stitch a line straight along there and then turn it this way, or else I could hem that down. If I pinned it I could hem it along, but actually I'm wondering whether there's any reason why I shouldn't do a raw edge. I think actually that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a bit of a practice. If it doesn't work, well, I'll know for next time. I've never actually done crazy patchwork with a raw edge, but who knows, it might work perfectly fine. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to lie it where I want, which I think is there. I'm actually just going to take my needle. I'll take a matching thread because I want these stitches to stay in, but I don't want them to be too visible. In the end, every seam will be embellished, and so in a way, as long as your patchwork is secure, I think the raw edge should work. Might not be conventional, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to do a little stitch on the front and a big stitch on the back, just to sort of to tack it down. I'm intending to leave these stitches in, so I've seen K3N, Catherine, on her channel do this and call it the invisible baste, and that is exactly what it is. Mine's not going to be as invisible as that. I think I knew it as just pin tacking or prick tacking. My mum used to make tailored jackets when she was very young, and she did them all by hand, and she used to use this stitch in tailoring, and so it was a way of putting layers of men's jackets together. But invisible baste, it's just as good. It's just another name for something that has been around quite a long time, I think. Actually really enjoying what Catherine's doing on her channel. It's so different from what I do normally, but I feel as if we've got the same thing going on in our heads, even if our outcomes are sort of different. Okay, so I haven't cut that patch down yet because I don't exactly know where it's going to go, but what I am going to do is I'm going to cut any excess off underneath the seam, because I want to not have a huge amount of bulk underneath. So I've cut that one back. I think I would like this one here. And in this way you just end up building up a scrappy design. You can be designing it more than I am. I'm just more of a go as you go, without any thought really. But pin it if you want to. And I think I'm just going to do these small stitches. It's just keeping the pink on, it won't matter. They won't necessarily shout out at you when the whole seam treatment is on top of it. It'll be fine. You could always piece an entirely separate piece of fabric and embellish it and stitch it onto this page. That would be another way of finishing the page. But it doesn't bother me having the extra fabric there. Be interesting to work with the raw edge. I think that's Catherine's influence on me. She's making me go raw edged. Another patch on. I'm just going to do a hybrid style. I'm a rule breaker. Who says crazy patchwork needs turned edges? Ha! Had to turn edges. Where's my pin cushion? Been using this one lately. It works really well. I just slide the little tin lid open and it's perfect. So next piece, let's have a look. Or maybe I'll finish the bottom of here first. Actually, that looks like it would work really nicely. So I think, and then another piece can come here. So I think I'm going to get this one on here. So actually, you probably don't need to see me put all these pieces of fabric on. So I'm going to continue with this invisible based or prick stitching, as I think my mum would call it. And I will come back once I've got my whole page covered with fabric. I've got all of my patches prick stitched on, so, and I've even gone round and I've cut my patches right to my seam lines and to the fold line, and I'm not sure how I'm finishing that off yet. Probably a blanket stitch all the way around, could be a hem stitch, or I might just wait until I'm putting the page together. So the outside edge is going to be left. And I've got two thoughts about doing this raw edged. One, it's definitely was easier to put down than having to sew them on, turn them over, press them. So that was definitely easier. It looks different being all like this, and what I don't have is the ridge of the seam line to nestle things in, like beads or lace or something. But also what I don't have is a big thick seam line underneath that I need to get my needle through, or need to pull a ribbon through or something like that. So I think it swings and roundabouts, and I'll decide at the end whether this has been a good experiment or not. But so far I think it's going to be fine. So the first thing I'm going to do, I've just picked out a random piece of thread, and it's a rust colour. It's actually got 3 strands, and I'm using a needle with a decent eye but a sharp point, because even though I don't have the seam lines, I've still got 2 or 3 layers to do. And for the first thing, I am going to do running stitch, and I'm just going to do a bit of a wavy line, and I'm intending that this is whipped. You know how I like a whipped stitch. So I'm going to just go, you can mark it, absolutely mark it. In fact, maybe I should do that just to show that I do know how to do, I do know how to do things properly, as opposed to just sort of putting my stitches in and winging it one. I actually got a curved needle and I could use that, so let's have a look and see how that would work. I can just put the needle down and I can draw and turn the needle over, match it up and draw again. And I'm sure there's proper things, but sometimes you just have to think, what have I got? So there, I'm going to draw that curvy line and I'll follow that. Actually, I've just realised that needle should be in my sleeve, shouldn't it? I have to find a space for it. So now I've got a line to follow that's going across this seam. I can just pick my needle and thread up, and I'm not doing too tiny a running stitch because I'm going to be whipping it, and that'll be the start of combining some stitches together to make something that looks really complicated but actually is quite simple. I'll just follow this curving line. There are plenty resources out there for crazy patchwork and embroidery and what have you, but I think once you just get the idea of taking your simple stitches and combining them together, it goes a long way to help you do what you want to do and to achieve something. I'll finish that off. I don't want that to go onwards at the minute. While it's in my needle, I'll just finish this off somewhere. And things like this, if I can finish off the piece of thread so it doesn't go back in my tangle shorter, I try and do that. So I'm just going to come over here and I'll use it again, and what shall I do this time? I shall do a bit of zigzag. For a zigzag, I just need to go across the seam at a diagonal and sort of make yourself a triangle by coming diagonal on the back, and then go back up to the point, and from then on it's straight stitching. You take a stitch on one side of the seam, come back to where you've just been in and take a stitch on this side of the seam. Now, I could have laid a piece of ribbon or a piece of lace under here and that would have couched something down, but I'll do something else instead. I just want to finish off this piece of brown thread. I'll carry on just taking straight stitches and angling them back to the stitch before so that I can get a zigzag. That's just about going to do me well to get down to this little piece. There's the end of my thread and the last stitch going in, so I'll just finish that off underneath. Like this. This is, I've never used this. This is sort of like actually I've just split it down. It's split into two. Now I'm going to come up from the bottom and I'm going to use the blunt point of this needle to weave through the running stitch, and immediately we're going to get something really nice on this wavy line. This is really nice. It's a soft cotton. I think it would actually split down again. I thought it was a bit of a chain stitch, but it isn't. It's something different entirely. It's a bit slubby, which is really nice. And I'll take that down and finish that off. So that's twice I've been up that seam already. So let's do a little bit more on it. What about I take some green. It sort of matches that. It'll make it look purposeful. I'm going to use all 6 strands. I'll go back to a sharp needle. And what about if I did some chain stitches in the dip of each? So let's see what that'll look like. So I'll go right down to the middle here. And I'll do 1 chain stitch facing downwards. And then I'll do 1 each side, so I've got a little cluster of 3. I'll make this one in the direction I'm travelling in, the last one, because it'll mean I can easily hop over to there. And as you can see, my little prick stitches have been totally camouflaged by everything. I'll come straight over to the middle of this curve and I'll do the same again. So I'll do my middle one first, go right over the seam line. I'm doing them at about 1/2 centimetre. Back down to the bottom. And one to this side. So there's nothing, and there's no stitch so far that you haven't been doing on the previous pages. It's just showing how they can be combined together to make something even more, even though they're really simple stitches. So there's the next cluster of 3, and I hop along to the middle of the next curve, and I've got 2 more clusters to do. I've finished the chain stitches and I've got this lovely, really pretty variegated pearl cotton. It's pearl number 5, and I've got that in my needle with a point, and I'm going to make the 4th pass along this seam. So the first was the running stitch, the second was the whipping, the third was the chain stitch. I'm going to do French knots, and I'm going to come up at each point. I'm going to work my way along this row, and I'm going to do a 3 wrap knot. Remember, hold them down to the fabric as you pull them through. I think I've actually decided to do a little straight stitch while I'm on, down into the bottom, back up to the top, just for no other reason than I thought it would look nice. So a little straight stitch, another 3 wrap French knot. The variegated cotton's going to look like these are all being made with different threads nearly. Go back there, make another little straight stitch into the bottom of these flowers, back up for the French knot. All of this can be done by hand, in your hand. You don't need a hoop or anything. And then a 3rd French knot will finish that little cluster off. Now I could just as easily have put beads on here, or I could have chosen to make the little flowers with ribbon instead of thread, and I probably will do that on another one, but today I'll just use thread. I'm going to put the same little straight stitches in. It's just adding that little bit of extra, a little bit of colour. I did actually consider doing this whole crazy quilt page in a monochrome background, because I thought it would look a bit different. So I was going to get the greys and beiges and things like that, and then I thought any bit of colour I put on top of there would really show up, and I might still do that for something else I've got in mind. Straight stitch down, back up for the 3rd French knot of the group, 3 wrap knot. And can you see how very quickly you can have quite a complicated seam treatment just by combining your simple stitches? And you don't even have to plan it all out in advance. You can just look and think, what do I want to add next? It is quite nice working without the seams in the way. So actually, I think I'm going to be quite pleased that I've done this raw edged. Maybe I've invented something. I quite often think I've invented something and I usually haven't. Like I thought I'd invented backwards knitting, but I hadn't. Maybe I invented my stick closure on my hussif. I think that's definitely my invention. Oh, I do love pearl cotton. It's really nice. Can I just finish this off? Oh, that's looking really pretty. So, shall I use this? I've got it in my needle. Let me just think, what can I use this for? Maybe I can go up this seam with, let's think, a bit of feather stitch. I turn it round. And feather stitch always comes from top to bottom. Let me work down this piece here, and I'm just going to go take a stitch down towards the seam, put my thread around as if I was going to do a blanket stitch, and pull nicely. And then I'm going to do one off to the side, so I'm not coming down to the seam that time. I'm going back into the fabric on the same level as where the stitch came out. I'm angling towards the seam, but I'm not going back up to it. And in essence, you've got a blanket stitch done on the side. If I went on like that, I'd be doing blanket stitches. But I'm going to change direction. I'm going to come back over towards the seam on the same level that I went in, and I'll go back to the seam again in the middle. Don't pull them too tight so you pucker up anything. But then I'm going to continue on and do another one. So it's sort of giving 2 stitches each way. But you can do feather stitch with 3 stitches each way or anything, but I'll carry on with 2. So the same level as you've come out, angle towards the middle, and do another stitch that way as if you're going to do another blanket stitch on the same angle. And then change direction. And I'll come this way instead. This is good for stems of flowers, for grassy bits that you might be doing, all sorts of things. At the moment I'm just using it to use up this variegated pearl cotton, because I am still going to go back to this seam, but this will be then ready to do something else with. Right, well I've got right down to there. I still feel like I just want to finish this thread off instead of taking it out of my needle. I'm going to just do straight stitches over here. I don't know what else I'll do on here, but they're not going to be of any harm. They'll go in with whatever I put on top, and I'm not wasting my thread. I think I'm going to leave that as it is for the moment, and I'm going to do another seam treatment and then leave that for now. So what about doing this one here? So I've got some red silk in my needle, and it's just been out of my tangle here, just trying to use some things up, and it's got about the same thickness as the pearl had, so probably about a size 5 thickness. And I thought I'd go up this lovely daisy fabric with some herringbone stitch, because that's a really nice one to embellish too. So what I'm going to do, I've come up at the bottom here, and I'm going to work both sides of the division in the fabrics, and I'm going to come down and take a little backward stitch on this side, and then jump forward and a little backward stitch on that side. I remember herringbone, you sort of stitch backwards to progress forwards, and for a right-handed person you are going to be starting at the other end of the row. I can't even do it, but you'll be taking a stitch that way and then moving that way, so you'll stitch backwards to move that way. I'm just going to take each stitch. I can lie that in if I want to make sure that I'm lying them all exactly the same. They're totally covering up my prick stitches. And I know it's a bit wiggly, but it's not going to be seen once it's stitched. I'm going to go over that bit of embroidery there, don't think it matters. And I do want to make these as even as I can. You just get into a rhythm of making the stitches the same length. So on Crazy Patchwork, you can do as many seam treatments as you like or not, but quite often they really do get heavily embellished, and that's part of the beauty of making that type of patchwork, is all the embellishment that you can do after, and nothing really is too much. It just depends on your individual style as to what you like. Oops. The only thing with the silk, it does definitely knot up a bit. It's actually, my sister brought this back from Turkey. She went to a silk carpet factory, I think, and there was all the waste, the silk waste that they weren't using, and she asked whether she could take some back, and so she brought me some of the silk that they were throwing out, the silk threads. And finish off. So what can I do now that I've got herringbone down? It's got to be something I can do. I've got this strand of purpley mauve. I think there's 5 strands there because I've taken a strand out, that's why it's in my tangle. And I'm going to start off by whipping or interlacing this stitch. So I'm going to go across that little cross there and bring my needle underneath, just down underneath that long stitch, and pull it in. I'm not going to pull anything tight. And then I'm going to go across this cross and go up that long stitch. So you just really need to look at the long stitches, and then down that long stitch and up that one. And so what I'm doing is I'm weaving up and down, but I'm actually going across each cross where the herringbone crosses over. So I'm going down that one and up that one, down, and you're not going through the fabric at all, not pulling it tight. If I pull it tight, I'll get a straight line, and a thicker thread, I think, will show this off to perfection. If you use too thin a thread, it might not be seen as well, and a nice contrasting thread also. And actually that already looks really pretty, but I know I can do more than that. Of course this one had 4 passes across. This has had just 2, so let's see what else I can do with this seam. That's a better yellow. Sort of goes with the little tulips on there. I think I will split it into 3 strands by just pulling them out one at a time. 2, 3. So this time I think I would like to do a little lazy daisy stitch and make a flower. I want to come up in the middle. I take a little stitch, anchor my chain stitch down, and that's a lazy daisy. And I'm going to do 5 in a little circle. They just radiate out, just try and keep them the same length of stitch. A little bite of fabric that you're picking up in your needle needs to be about the same. And now I'm going to come up in the middle, and I could just do a same French knot, or I could make another pass and do a French knot in a different colour. I think I'd quite like to put a bead on, so I'm going to go and look for a bead. Found these beads in my bead collection, and I had a look and they seem to have big enough holes, and so I'm going to thread one of those beads down. So if you don't have beads, just use a French knot, that's no problem at all. But I have the beads, and so I'm going to use them. So I've just put them onto the tin lid from my pin cushion as a way of keeping them together, and I've thread the bead on straight back down, and I'll come up to do the next flower. Actually, I don't think I want the flowers that near together, so I think I'm just going to put another bead on, and then the next one gets a flower. That's what I think. So I'm set up ready for the next daisy. Same again, little bite through the loop, hook it down, back to the middle. Make sure you're not pulling your chain stitches too tight, or else you'll close the little petal up. Back up to the middle to pick a bead up, and back down the middle. Oh, I think I've got a smaller one this time. Well, that'll be fine. And then hop along for the next bead on its own. I've finished that row. I think it looks really pretty with the beads on. And just to finish the other side of this seam treatment, I've actually put some ribbon in my needle. Now this isn't real silk, it's polyester ribbon, because that's what I have the most of. This is actually just a fine 2mm one, and I'm just going to use it as if it was embroidery thread. So if you don't have any ribbon, just use all 6 strands of your embroidery thread. That would be perfectly fine. And I just want to be able to do something else with the other side of this seam, and I just haven't decided what yet. Oh, I do. I think I would like to do a fly stitch, but I'm going to do it between the crosses of the herringbone, and then before I pull my ribbon all the way through, I'm just going to see where I feel it's going to look the best. So I'll just pull my needle up and have a little look. Oh, I think I need it to be bigger than that, so I'm going to go a bit further down and pick the loop up. Yes, that's better. And then I'm just going to do a ribbon stitch, which is actually where you puncture the ribbon itself as you go down. It should make a little point at the end, like that. And I'm going to come back up here. Yeah, just going to do a straight stitch there. I want to do my little V's opposite the beads. So I'm sort of going down the legs of the herringbone, back to there. And make sure I'm actually taking a decent stitch down. Picking up the loop. And a little stalk and through the ribbon to finish. And so hopefully you can see that by just doing very simple stitches but keeping going, making another pass along a seam and another one, all of a sudden you end up with something quite complicated to look at, but actually each stage has been quite simple. Oh, I can hear Boo again. Can't I, Boo? And now I think a last little something on here. Maybe this blue pearl cotton. It's a bit of a dull blue, but I think it goes with this Air Force colour on the stripy sheet. And to start right at the point, I'm just going to make 3 straight stitches, but just 3, and then I'm going to hook straight over and do the same on the point of each little fly stitch. I'm going to finish each little stalk with a French knot. This time I'm actually going to try for a messy French knot. I'd rather it was a bit more loose. I don't want this little neat knot that's there. I'd rather have something a bit more freeform. So I'm going to go around, let's see, let's go once, twice, 3, 4, 5. Let's try 5. That's what I'm going to try. I'll go back down. I'm just going to let it go a bit loose and pull it down. I'm going to hold it all together. Of course it would knot up on me, wouldn't it? And there it is. So I've got a bit of a loopy French knot going. I think it's going to look nice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Back down in the same place. Try and keep them a bit loose, but then hold it together as I pull through. I think I actually wanted it to be a bit more messy again, but I'll go with what I've got. I think I actually want more. I think I want a whole. I think I'm going to fill in the gaps there with another one. So I'm going to put 5 on each little 3 stalks. And try to do my messy knots. 5 wraps. I may go down a little way away, hold them but let it be loose. Well, that's better. And I'm actually going to do 5 again. So I'll just finish off. I've got 2 more sets to do. I'm going to leave you with the page as it is for now. So plenty combinations of stitches making things look more complicated than they really are. I think I've got something different to do with this bit, but I'll see. I won't know till I get there. Well, I really enjoyed doing that bit of crazy patchwork and showing you how to get the first lines of seam treatments in. And the raw edges, I think, are going to work super well. It was just a decision I made as I started to do the page not to turn them under, because I originally was going to just be stitching them on by hand and turning and pressing, but actually it's working out fine so far, and I think that's a good technique to use. What it's doing is minimising the bulk of the seams, and because they're going to be so heavily stitched over, nothing is going to be coming loose. So maybe you'll want to try it that way, or maybe you'll want to do it traditionally and turn over each of the seams. Either way will be perfectly fine. So I hope you use some of your lovely fabrics and give this a go. I'm actually off to visit my daughter, and it's a bit of an unexpected visit, but I'm going to be staying with her for the following week, and as video scheduled, I'm definitely taking my knitting and I'm taking my stitching, because I can't go anywhere without something for my hands to do. Anyway, I will leave it there. Thank you for visiting Marion's World. Thank you to everyone who is sending me comments, pushing the like button, pushing the like button, and new subscribers, welcome, and everyone who's been here for ages, thank you so very much for sticking with my little channel. Thank you for all the supporters over on Ko-fi, really appreciate it, and everyone who sends super thanks, you're all stars. Everybody's a star. Everybody's a star in my book. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time. Bye for now, everyone.